The biggest thing that I want to share with people right now is this is a time to see people consolidating. There's lots of stores that are going to be closing. The people that can make it through, though, if you can make it through and then grow from here, it really will be those stories of the people that took a risk and then changed their entire lives.
All right, Shideler, welcome to the podcast, man. Appreciate you being here.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
I figured we'd press record because we had a few good things going. But before we get into all that, like I know a little bit about you. You're in the franchise space. But yeah, tell us just a little bit about like what you've got going on and kind of how you got to where you're at right now.
Yeah, the short version is that I got my degree in personal finance and thought that I was going to be a financial planner, and interviewed with a couple of places, and they just basically told me, you seem way too entrepreneurial to enjoy just sitting in the same desk talking about, index funds and things. Because I've always wanted to help people find investment opportunities, and that's my passion. So transitioned into owning insurance books of business after I got my degree. And that led me to being a partner with an early Crumble Cookies franchisee.
Yeah.
And this is where my life turns, where more or less I said, I'm not totally happy doing the insurance. I would really love it if something like this could happen. And so I went and found some investors with my partner, Taylor, found an operator, and then said, well, we're going to go apply. And if we get approved, I guess we'll just kind of go from there. Right. Yeah. And it really felt like something that was just falling into place in my life, where we got approved by Crumble. And next thing you know, I'm flying out to San Diego to look at locations. And fast forward to now, we've got 9 locations open across 3 different states. And it's been a whirlwind. I like to tell people, I think I've made every possible mistake as a franchisee. And now my gift is to help people not make those same mistakes in the financing, in the development of the locations. And there's so many ways to go about doing it, and so many different concepts in franchising in general that I don't, broker franchises or anything like that. My business is Initiator Capital right now with Landon Ainge and Clinton Jolly. Yeah. Helping people fund their businesses. And so we consult for free and then get paid as people are able to obtain financing.
Yeah, that's cool, man. Okay. So you got my wheels spinning because I just made a post about this today, the day that we're recording. But, there's a lot of salespeople who got laid off. I mean, like sales layoffs are happening every day. And that's a whole different story that I get super frustrated with. Because essentially the short version of it is you had the 2020 through 22, you had this big boom. People were just creating jobs that essentially shouldn't have existed. You're like manufacturing these jobs that really shouldn't have been there. And then you let people sell for a year and a half, 2 years, and then you lay everybody off. And then all the sales organizations go back to where they're supposed to be, which is like, maybe you got 10 or 12 AEs. Yep. You know what I mean? That you're paying well, not 50. You know what I'm saying? Yep. And now you have thousands of salespeople who are really good at what they do, but like it's so competitive that they can't get jobs. And so I wrote on LinkedIn today that I was like, if you've been affected by these layoffs and you've got a 401k or a little bit of money saved up and you don't know what you're going to do, if you know how to sell, you got 40% of a business.
Right.
And then if you go franchise, they've got the other 60%, right? Which is like your ops and things like that. And so I think I'm a big fan of franchises. I think a lot of people, though, are curious about the financing piece of it. Like, there's so many conflicting things when you look on the internet, right? Like you got other people's money, the other people's money guys, you got the, all this rollover stuff. You got, do you put in your own capital? Do you get partners? Do you, You know what I mean? Do you create a fund and then go do it? Like, and I guess everything has its pros, but I'm curious just in your sense, specifically for like, you know, a salesperson or something like that. Like, how do you get into franchising? Like, what's the first thing you should think about when you want to look?
I think you need to decide how much time that you're willing to give to something, because, you know, people say, hey, Shideler, I want to own a franchise. What can I do on nights and weekends?
The franchise.
You know, and I'm like, it's probably better to just find some place to put your money and take a 10% interest on someone who maybe is in doing the franchising. It's like buying a home. You have to jump in, and then you make mistakes and you learn. And then you can actually make progress and start gaining extra units. I don't know if I would have ever got in if it hadn't have just been for them saying yes. And then I was kind of forced to start because I had all of the pieces in place. If I had them say, yeah, you're approved, now I need to go raise money and now I need an operator, there's barriers. Like I had more reasons to say no. And, you know, I've dealt with a contractor that stole all of our money and materials in California. I lived out there for months and months doing the construction to open my locations. So because of these trials that I've experienced, I've now learned every aspect of the business.
Good Lord, dude.
It was awful.
Wow.
Awful. Like, I'll never forget January 2022. I had just a pit in my stomach, and me and my partners, we all met and we said, you need to go down there right now and figure out what's going on. Because everything was blamed on COVID. And the guy was saying, I just can't do this. And our permits, they're hard in California and San Diego anyways. But then he's blaming it on things. I get down there, Dalton, all of my equipment is sitting in this unfinished space that is supposed to be my store. You couldn't do construction work. And so all I could do was go in, and I have a video. I probably need to put it on LinkedIn or something, but it was a low like I've never experienced, where I don't know how I'm going to recover from this because this seems overwhelming. And I'm a new guy. I've got a young family. I am all in on this. And so we did what we had to, and we moved that equipment to a different room, and we started doing the construction ourselves and built out everything. And
that's crazy.
Very stressful.
Well, and Crumble's one of those franchises, like a lot, that's very specific on how the store is supposed to be set up.
Yeah. Oh, well, and then you're working with city and county planners that are very specific as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they're very strict.
They go back and forth.
Yeah.
It was a really tough time. And again, I wouldn't want to go through that again. But now I feel like, going back to your original question of what should people do, I really think it's a good idea on your first franchise to go partner with someone that has experience just to get things going.
Yeah, just
to start.
Take a little bit of like that, maybe, pay that dummy tax a little bit, give up a couple points of ownership, give up a couple, you know what I mean?
Exactly.
Just so you can learn. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. Yeah.
Well, getting into franchising, your first unit, you feel like, oh yeah, I'm going to get this brand and I'm going to stick with it forever. You learn so much and you never know. So even if you go partner with someone on your first and you say, you know what, I'm going to now sell out my ownership. I like this other brand. You've got so much time that you could still build a massive portfolio of a whole different brand. Yeah. But if you've learned in the process, super valuable. So I tell people now, I 100%, if I could do it over again, I would have given 10 to 15% away for a minority shareholder that could put in some money, help me get the down payment for my loan or what I needed, and then guide me through a lot of the mistakes. Because you sign the franchise agreement and now you're expected to know how to do commercial real estate, because now you need to go find a space.
Yeah.
You need to understand how to keep a contractor accountable, what to even do.
That's right.
Now, when do I need an attorney? It seems like a good idea, but man, they're expensive. So you've now got all of these professionals that you're expected to know how to coordinate with, and you can really get taken advantage of if you don't know what you're doing.
Well, and here's one thing. When I was selling franchises, I would tell people because I would say like there's a good chance if you don't know what you're doing, you're going to get taken advantage of, or at least, and then I would say, or you're going to feel like it because this franchise attorney is looking at 100 FTDs a day.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, like, I don't know if he's going to miss anything.
Yep.
Right. And if he does,
still might.
And if he does, is it malicious? Probably not, dude. He's looking at 100 of these. And an attorney is different because they have a lot of like, compliance that they have to run through. So that might not be, but like a general contractor, they're just going to assume that you know everything. Just like, they're not going to assume that you're new and that they need to walk you through every step of this. You know what I mean? They're going to be like, oh, he's already got this. He must already know. Okay, let's go. I
will never forget looking at some of the first locations and looking around saying, well, I mean, these windows are pretty nice, that'll look good on the store. I had no clue what to ask them. What's important? I guess we could see it from the street and these windows look pretty good. I didn't know to ask what the amperage is of the space or what type of HVAC unit is already in place and would I have to replace that? And all of these things that now you just know inherently that you need to check because it's really going to affect your budget going into a project. Yeah. Well, your budget and dude, commercial real estate's a beast. Like most people don't know triple net. Right. Yeah. Like commercial real estate is actually bananas. You pay for the space and then you pay for everything. Like everything else. Like they actually triple net on that and crazy, dude. And I didn't know that before. I mean, I'm glad that I know a little bit because I was on the other side. I was selling them. And so I would hear the questions and I'd be like, oh, that was a really good question. I should probably know the answer to that. But so that's crazy. What do you look for in partners? I think the older I get, it's less of perception on, how other people see them and more of like, is this someone that I want to be around? And is this someone that I can look at their past relationships? It seems like people continually want to do business with them. Yeah. Long-term partnerships, people, hey, I've worked with this guy for 20 years. This guy can vouch for me. And, obviously it's harder when you're the new guy breaking into that, and you can never get it right 100% of the time, but what people will tell you without saying too much what they really think. And especially if you're new, as a new franchisee, I would not take a chance on a new GC or on a new broker. And again, that's very biased to say. And I was the young guy not too long ago, but now I get it where as I'm more mature, now I could look at going with a GC because I know how to keep them accountable. I know what I expect from my commercial agent. And I think there is a lot of wisdom in just people like if they've been in an industry for a long time, they're probably decent. And you can probably dig pretty quick to find out if they know what they're talking about. I like that because I tell business owners kind of the same thing when it comes to accounting or whatever. That's what I got both of my degrees in. And it's just so funny that like people are like, no, I just want to pawn that off on the accountant. And I'm like, that's how fraud happens. Yep. And like sometimes malicious fraud and embezzlement and sometimes not because you don't know the questions you need to ask or you don't know the compliance that needs to go into your specific industry, right? Or what the IRS is going to expect at the end of the year. Like if you don't know that and you just lean on somebody who you hope knows it, I mean, that's just a recipe for disaster, dude. Well, same thing with an operator. Yeah, exactly. Right? I thought, hey, you get an operator and they're going to just take care of it for you. Yeah, you're like, no. You don't have to do anything, And you can only hold someone accountable to the point that you understand it. Yeah. And that was a really hard lesson to learn, being like, hey, if the numbers aren't where they're at and I don't understand why they're not improving, I accept the excuse at face value because I don't know how to push back. Right. Yeah. So whether it's you on your team or someone else, someone has to be there. If I was going back, it's like, you can't just do something part-time. You have to go all in, learn everything. And now you can step out of the business and run it hands off. And thankfully, we're to the point now where the day-to-day isn't full of, tasks. We've got amazing teams in place. So I now can be able to grow the lending business, but it took a lot to get there. And people tell me like, oh yeah, that sounds great. Like I want to be an absentee owner. Yeah. Like there's no such thing. So Dirty Dough would go off of the semi-absentee model,
But I would tell people, like, if you're not ready to do that for at least the first year, then don't do it. Right. Well, I thought it was semi-absentee. I'm like, absolutely. But like, if you don't know anything about the business, right? Like just what you were saying, like if you don't know anything, then you can't be absentee.
Well, and poor franchisors as well, because they really say, hey, here you go. And then a lot of these people might not have ever read a P&L before, or a balance sheet, or understood even what they're looking at. They look at the top number of the revenue and they look at the bottom number on their net operated income or net income. And they're like, where's the disconnect here? How much should this be? Where can I improve? And what are percentages? I say to people, if you don't know the percentages in your business and you just know the numbers, you're missing such a big aspect of your business, because it's really hard to go off of benchmarks when you've got such different volumes and different types of businesses, where if you can say, no, if you can live by the 25, 25, 20, where your gross profit is made up of 25% labor, 25% food costs, you're going to get 20% net operating.
Yeah.
And it's a great business. But I'll even say that to people and they'd say, I've never heard that before. Like, well, if you're not hitting that, you're probably having a hard time, especially right now.
Yeah.
Right now is scary. I mean, I have people, franchises, people, not franchises, retail all over coming to you saying like, hey, how's business? And it's that thing where everyone's down right now.
Yeah. Nobody wants to talk about it.
We're all down right now. It's tough right now.
Yeah.
You have to be lean. And so then it really comes back to those numbers and percentages.
Yeah.
It has to be a focus.
I remember when I was in my accounting degree, our professor was like, it's kind of stupid when I say it, but the power that it had on me at the time was like crazy, because that's when it all clicked. And he was like, hey, it was like a sports analogy. He goes, hey, is 10 points good? And everybody was like, kind of like, what are you talking about? He's like, is 10 points good? And they're like, what do you mean? And he's like, exactly.
Yep.
Like, he's like, because 10 points in soccer is unreal.
Right.
He's like, but 10 points in, basketball, right? You're like, you have a problem.
Right.
He's like, so context matters. And that was our business accounting class. So he was like, it's industry standards. So we were learning financial ratios, just like what you're talking about. So like 25 in food is great.
Right.
25 in construction might not be. Right. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know anything about construction.
Yeah.
But you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know, dude. So you kind of got to, like, back to your partner thing. Like, what is a good, ratio that we need to be at, and like, where do we need to be, And I like that you focus on percentages, because it really, that's probably bigger than the number itself. Is like, this is 50% of your thing. Like, yeah, you think it's low, but that's insanity.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, we should be lower or whatever. And then you get to learn.
And thankfully, I mean, I try to get away from franchises, but business in general, whenever you can surround yourself with others that can be open and honest and say, let's look at our P&Ls together. How are you doing? And I feel like it's such a private thing, and you do have to be careful in case there's someone that's predatory, but I think you get a lot more value out of things if you will just say, hey, this is how I'm doing. Is that good?
Yeah.
What do you think?
Well, I think
trusted accountants or mentors.
Yeah. I think that's the benefit of a franchise, though, because you get other franchisees.
Yep.
But business, I think as an accountant, show people. And I think that's why you go to an accountant, though, in your field, because you might not be able to share P&Ls, but if you go to an accountant who's only in franchising or who's only in construction, they should be able to tell you again. Right. They should be able to tell you, like, this is not good, or this is very good.
Well, and with my day to day now, I get to look at financials every day of different businesses that are looking for funding.
Yeah.
And it's very often that the revenue numbers are very impressive, and they might even be well-known brands.
Yeah.
And then you find out what's getting to the bottom line, and it's next to nothing.
Right.
And, somebody's getting money for payroll, and they're also getting an award. And, there's a lot of different things that are under the surface of what's a business that's generating revenue and what's a business that's worth owning. Very different things, right?
That's so funny. And then you have, like, I know a lot of people, the big word when you're investing in or buying a business is that acronym that's EBITDA, right? Earnings before interest, amortization, and taxes or whatever.
Yep.
I remember telling a friend that he was like, I'm looking at buying this business. I was like, he's like, the net income's this. And I'm like, it doesn't really matter. He's like, what are you talking about? Net income is it. My favorite joke is about an accountant is like, there's an engineer, a scientist, and an accountant, and they're all asked the same question. It's like, what's 2 + 2? The engineer says 2 of what plus 2 of what? The scientist says 4. And the accountant says, what do you want it to be?
Which, that's a whole other,
but
so
like,
accurate.
but you know what I'm saying?
Right.
But like, so if you just go off of net income, like,
right.
there's a lot that we can, there's a difference between the books that we send into the IRS and the books that we send to investors.
Right.
And most people don't even know that. Like there's at least 2 sets of books that you keep.
Well, and I mean, that's an actual term in accounting, right? You've got managerial accouning and financial accounting.
Yeah.
So, this is not, we're not making something up. This is what's taught in school.
Right.
The biggest thing that I want to share with people right now is this is a time to see people consolidating. There's lots of stores that are going to be closing. The people that can make it through, though, if you can make it through and then grow from here, it really will be those stories of the people that took a risk and then changed their entire lives.
Yeah.
And I feel like in the last year, there's been something that's switched for me where I want to start sharing more. And that's why I wanted to do a podcast or do these different things. And now I've been consistently posting on LinkedIn for a year. And it's been amazing, just the awesome people that I've been able to come into contact with and just share encouragement where they're like, hey, I know you're doing crumble and I've got a dessert concept here in this part of the country. What are you seeing? What's going on? And just being able to say like, hey, you're doing awesome. Here's what I would try, trying to just have that community to help. Hey, we're all going to make it.
Well, I think that's super important, and not to make this all about franchises, because I know you're more than that, right? But like, I think that's also
the trend that way a lot.
But it's good though, because one of those things that I've noticed in the franchising world is like everybody's so knit together. Like, I remember Dirty Dough and being at Dirty Dough, and when we would sell a franchise, I mean, they would have other food concepts.
Yep.
They would have like a tea place or whatever, and they would just come by it, and like no one really. And then they would ask us those questions, hey, like my tea place does this. Do you like? Right. And we were all just collaborating, and it was very nice. And there's competition, but just because somebody buys, one doesn't mean they can't buy another. And most of the time, a seasoned franchisee will have like 5 or 6 different things.
Right.
Just a whole portfolio. And so that's definitely encouraging. You just look for help because this economy is wild right now. We were talking about layoffs before this.
Right.
So many people are just getting laid off and then not knowing where to go.
Well, and I think you brought up a good point of when you get laid off, maybe don't just go right to the next job. Maybe you should consider because people are getting laid off, there's probably opportunities to buy businesses, to start things where, I mean, some of the most successful businesses have come out of recessions.
Oh,
right?
Totally. Yeah.
And people are still retiring. There's still amazing businesses. And so what I love to talk to people about as well is getting creative on how you're going to structure that deal to purchase a business, right? If you're buying it from someone, there's a lot of aspects of funding that you don't even have to get massive loans. Loans can be a small part of that, but
you can do like seller financing or you can do equity deals. All stock deals, stuff like that. Like things that you learn about in college, they're like, but when they give you those case studies in college of like all stock deals, it's like these multi-million-dollar things, but you're like, no. If he's an S Corp, he's got at least 100 shares of stock that we can work with, right? Like, and if he's not an S Corp, maybe don't buy the business yet.
Or just change it to an asset purchase, right?
Or an asset,
And then if it's an asset purchase, okay, there's going to be some people that might be interested, especially if it's an equipment-heavy business. Somebody could lend on that.
Yeah, and you could get different
seller finance. You could bring in some equity. There's a lot of different ways that you can do it, especially right now. People are willing to be creative to get out of tough situations. I keep telling people, if I had conviction on one particular brand right now, I could go scoop up a whole bunch of units for really, really cheap it's just is now the time to do that. It's timing. Right. If you knew the market was coming back and you could be the one going in and picking things up at equipment costs, man, you could look like a genius.
Yeah.
But then if we dip further, now you're struggling. So,
I think you're right though. I've had this podcast for like 4 years. And I think the coolest story, almost everybody who I've interviewed who's a founder for a long time started during a downtime. But the one that comes to mind, Mo Bettis.
Yeah.
Okay. I interviewed Chemo Mac. He's a good friend of mine. He started Mo Bettis in 2008 when he was 39. No, not 39, 49.
Wow.
He was, that's crazy, right? Sells his thing, business, he lives in Hawaii, sells everything in Hawaii, comes to Utah, puts all of the equity into that first store in Bountiful, 2008. Him and his brother Kalani are like sleeping on the floor in Mobetta, trying to make it work. And now Mobetta is Mobetta, right? They got stores all
and I think that's a good thing to highlight, right?
Yeah.
People see Mobettas now and they're like, it's just a Hawaiian concept. Like anyone could have done that. And they're like, no, you didn't see what it took to get to this point. Well, that's a lot more.
And Chemo will tell you, I think it's on the podcast, but he'll tell you like his first store, that one in Bountiful, cost him like $100K.
Wow.
That's crazy.
That's right? Nothing, right?
Well, like $100K. And now he's like, and now 20 years later, whatever.
I guess back then would have been a lot more.
Yeah. But now he can get it for like, he can go into a place and get a Mobettas up for like 15K.
What?
Or like something real small like that.
Well,
it was just like, but he's telling me the story and I don't know the numbers.
Yeah.
And I could be totally off. But it was significantly higher on his first store. And then as he grew, now it's like, it's just, they don't even think. They just like, that's it. They just snap their fingers and it's, you know what I mean? Like those processes are just so crazy. So yeah, definitely. What's that quote? Like, don't judge someone's now on like now, basically, you always got to remember that it's started somewhere and it was really hard.
Yeah.
For people.
And people don't see that.
Well, and people don't understand like starting a restaurant business from scratch is insanely difficult.
One of the hardest things that I didn't even think would be an issue was getting a store open, hiring and training a bunch of people. And then, we had a great showing in the beginning, but then sales, they're going to go down from your grand opening, right? It's just natural. And to have some young kid come up to me as I'm cutting hours and as I'm asking people to go home and say, hey, Shideler, please don't send me home. I don't want to be at my house. I have nowhere else to go. Like I really need to make money and I just don't want to be at home. And I'm like,
damn it.
and just those are the things as a business owner, like I'm going to bed at night thinking about that kid.
Yeah.
And like, I really care about the people that I work for or that work for me. And in a way that you never think about and you're impacting lives. And then on the positive side, it's been so cool to promote kids that have worked hard and earned it and are now in leadership opportunities that at a young age that they never would have had. And I'm now so excited to keep building to say like, man, I want to go create more opportunities because I need to find a place for that guy.
Yeah.
Because he's so talented. Yeah. Right. And now
I got to keep him. Yeah.
I'm motivated to say like, man, I got to go do 10 more units because I've got the people to do it.
Yeah.
I've got such a good base. Money, you can go find money, but finding good people like this, man, I don't want to lose them.
Yeah. That's crazy, bro.
Yeah.
And those are the stories. Yeah, man. Like I hear you, dude. I think being a business owner is both like extremely lonely, but also extremely like fulfilling and like based around community. But you can feel two big emotions at the same time.
100%.
You can feel hopeful and terrified at the same time.
Well, I think that's why I've always lent to having partnerships. I know there's a lot of mavericks that'll go out and do it on their own. And I'm impressed. And honestly, sometimes you're like, man, it would be easier to do that in a lot of ways. But I love camaraderie. I love actually focusing on a goal together as a team and then hitting those milestones to say like, hey, we did this. I'm very much a person where I would take a smaller piece of a pie to be around people that I enjoy than to take more and not have anyone to enjoy it.
Well, yeah, I think that's a level of maturity, but also a level of business maturity. That's just like, most people are like, no, I want 100%. But what you don't realize is if you could take 1% of Amazon, you would.
Right. Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like you would. And, yeah, that's crazy, man. But Shideler, dude, we need to do this again. I appreciate you being here, dude.
Thank you.
Before I let you go, you've been building on LinkedIn. Tell everybody where they can follow you. And if they piqued if their interest is piqued with the financing stuff, how do they get a hold of you? All that good stuff.
Yeah. Just on LinkedIn. I have a very unique name, Shideler Bennett. So I have some of the best SEO that you can have.
That's right.
Search Shideler Bennett on LinkedIn. I promise I'm the first one to come up. So again, I appreciate the time and love to connect with anyone out there.
Amen. All right.